In less than 4 hours, Attorney General Jeff Sessions will go before the cameras to explain Donald Trump's expected end of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, better known as DACA. Now, Trump won't announce it, but he's going to sit down his AG to announce this delay and say it will not be enforced for at least 6 months. It was implemented in 2012 by former President Barack Obama. It defers deportation for immigrants brought to the U.S. illegally as children. Nearly 800,000 people will be affected. Here's what Trump said last week versus what he said during the campaign.
Should dreamers be worried?
We love the dreamers. We love everybody.
I will immediately terminate President Obama's illegal executive order on immigration.
The second largest DACA population in the nation lives in Texas, still reeling from the effects of Hurricane Harvey. That includes Houston paramedic Jesus Contreras. He was brought here legally by his mother when he was 6 years old.
Really on the ground, helping people get back up, and we're getting our butts handed to us by people upstairs in the White House and the president.
Now, of course, the worries over the president's plans have roiled communities of color for months. Plus, a recent study finds that about 700,000 workers will lose their jobs over the next 2 years. It will cost the nation more than $3 billion to replace them. Talking about this is Jonathan J. Green, co-creator of the UndocuBlack Network. And this is something that's important here. See, when we have this discussion about DACA, folks only think in terms of Latinos. This is also affecting black people. Talk about in terms of what numbers we're talking about and where are folks coming from who are impacted by this.
So thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation to be here with you to discuss this issue. What's really important for me and for us as the UndocuBlack Network is that people understand that immigration is also a racial justice issue, that it affects our community as well. There's around 565,000 black undocumented folks across the country that experience this system as well as the criminal justice system together. And so one of the things that we discussed on this show before that Washington Watch, our Sunday show, is that when we talk about the notion of undocumented immigrants, again, the face will be Mexico, Latin America, Central America, but we're talking about the folks who are from Bermuda, from the Caribbean, who are from African nations as well. Yeah, so some of the top countries of undocumented folks are actually from Jamaica as well, Trinidad and Tobago, and Nigeria, actually. So those are some of the folks that are affected by this decision as well. But I think the reason why UndocuBlack was formed is because we want folks to understand that there is an additional layer that we deal with, right? So for me, I'm not just worried about being deported, but I'm just also a young black man living in the city of Baltimore, right? So there are particular consequences to being that, and those need to be talked about as well.
George, what's interesting is you have Republican leadership who is being critical thus far of Trump, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan. All of a sudden, white conservative evangelicals have decided to wake up and even say the president should be showing some compassion here. But he is being hypocritical on this, flip-flopping back and forth. The person really driving this is Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
It's a tough decision. But
why is it tough?
Well, there's two decisions made. One, there's extended protective service for the Haitians, which comes up this month also. So you also have to look at the Haitian community and what decisions are going to be made there within the next 2 weeks, plus DACA. So you're looking at more than just DACA. You're looking at 52,000 Haitians that may be forcibly deported, and they make up a large portion of the economy of South Florida. So we have to look at this in a humane manner, and how do we integrate people or change the law so that people are integrated into our society? Now, was a mistake made when this was enacted? Probably, but we have to look at it humanely as to what we do. Now,
what mistake was made?
Wait a minute.
You mean under the Obama administration?
No, I'm not saying that. Will you let me finish?
One second. You said a mistake was made. Who made the mistake?
The mistake was made because when I visited another country, and I visited Panama, my passport is stamped. I have 90 days or so to visit that country. Now, I have to leave that country within 90 days. So if a grown adult comes into this country illegally, they know that they're breaking a law. Now we have to correct that. Is that a mistake or an error? So how do we correctly or humanely address that someone already broke a law?
But DACA is young children who are.
I know it's young. I know it's young children, but the adults the adults knowingly broke a law before they had children.
They're coming
I'm
here for the
really glad.
American
I'm
dream.
really
Of course,
glad.
Go ahead.
That's great.
Go ahead.
American dream. Go
So
ahead.
I'm really glad that you brought up temporary protective status because
Yes.
it is a huge issue that our Black immigrant community experiences as well. So it's, Haiti, as you mentioned, Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, all these different countries that are under that program, right? But I think I'm less concerned about talking about the legality of our folks being there. I'm more talking about the humanity of our folks, right? The fact that our folks are here and are really trying to live our lives. I'm just trying to be able to be a part of this community that I call home, right? So I'm not concerned about, correcting an error. To me, it's about us as a country talking about how the ways in which our laws are structured in a way that doesn't benefit certain communities, and it is rooted on anti-Blackness and capitalism.
But regardless of the idiocy of this president, Congress has a role in this as well.
Yep.
Okay, and so what is your group and other groups doing to pass the law, to get Congress to pass the law in regard to DACA to protect them on a long-term basis? Because it's an economic issue for them in many of their districts, and 2018 is right around the corner.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, because there have been several legislations that have been introduced to talk about, to fix this issue. And I think one of the best ones that we've seen is the DREAM Act. But I think our concern is that now that this administration is forcing Congress to deal with this issue, that they will use the sympathy that the American public has for people like me to be able to add to the additional criminalization of our communities, to the stupid border wall that he's been wanting to build. So I think it's important to be mindful of how we're building that legislation to make sure that they're not tacking on anti-immigrant measures as well.
Well, it's clear we have a xenophobe and a racist in the White House. Let's just be very frank about that.
Yes.
And so he had.
Fair.
So that is fair. That is fair.
I like facts. I just kind of like facts. I have a predisposition for facts. And so, what I'm concerned about then is we know who we're dealing with. We know what we're dealing with. We know that this is something that the majority of the public understands via humanity. We understand that children have no say-so in what their parents choose to do. And so it is not only unfair, but it's quite frankly illogical to go after the children, right? So knowing that this is going to happen anyway, given who we're dealing it with, what are your next steps? What are your plans to fight back?
Our immediate next step is always making sure that our folks are taken care of and okay. So we're actually holding a mixture of virtual and physical space for our folks to process what the announcement means. There's been different reports on what the announcement for DACA in particular will mean. So I think we need to talk about that, make sure our folks understand, make sure that also our folks are able to find a way to provide for themselves. I think, you talked about how these are workers that we're talking about. The DACA program provides a work permit and shields us from deportation, right? So I'm worried about keeping my job, but I'm also worried about not being deported. So how do we make sure that our communities armed with their rights, the knowledge that they need to be able to survive in the next few months and years to come as well?
And these are heroes. I mean, we had a DACA recipient lose his life trying to protect people in Houston.
Scott, final comment real quick.
Tried to do.
Well, I think partnering with other organizations and focusing on a congressional result, but also having your voices heard, getting in the streets, getting in the halls of Congress to make that difference. This delay for 6 months is politically driven, just like the whole issue of ending DACA is politically driven. And you've got to find a political solution, but you'll find a lot of political partners with you, so you got to stand with them and be heard.
Final comment.
I just want to say thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk about our particular community that experiences this acutely. But I also want folks to not just hear from the fear and the anxiety that we're experiencing, because there's also a lot of resiliency in our communities. We know that this program does not define our humanity and dignity. It just allowed us to operate more freely in it. So if and when it ends, we will continue to survive, we will continue to thrive, and we will continue to fight for this country that we call our home.
All right, Jonathan, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.